Thank you very much, Samira, and thank you to all of you. Thank you for having us here today to talk about this. What an absolute privilege it is. Firstly, to be talking to an audience of such high caliber, and secondly, to absolutely be talking about my favourite thing, which is the Channel 4 Diversity in Advertising Award. And what we wanted to do today, actually, is to unpack a little bit of what sits behind this award and actually take you on a journey, give you some insight into how it was brought to life for this particular campaign, and indeed what the results were for that business. Because fundamentally, there is still a long way for us to go in terms of diversity on screen, whether that be in the characters that we portray, whether that be in the stories that we tell, how those characters might be represented, and indeed the crew and all of the production and the behind-the-scenes piece. The industry still has many strides to take. But progress is being made, and I think it's with stories like these that we're going to share today that I think we can also inspire other brands, other businesses to take bigger and bolder steps forward. So in terms of why Channel 4 came up with this in the beginning, of course, from a Channel 4 perspective, this is fundamentally, diversity and representation is fundamentally part of what we're about. One of our core purposes is to represent unheard voices and to create change through entertainment. And within our remit, as it was defined, our remit is to appeal to people, whatever their culture, nationality, religious persuasion, physical and mental ability, sexual orientation, gender, race, or age. And all of that is in the Act of Parliament that set us up in the first place. And of course, there are many different examples of that in terms of the programming and the stories that we tell, whether that be Desmond's, the very first black sitcom in Britain back in the 80s, 1989 in fact, right through to our groundbreaking coverage of the Paralympics. All along the way, we've brought previously neglected experiences and unheard and unseen perspectives to life in what we do. And in 2016, we took the step forward to actually challenge ourselves and the rest of the advertising industry to take a bold step in terms of representation and diversity. And the Diversity in Advertising Award was founded. Since then, it's focused on a wide range of underrepresented, or in fact misrepresented groups in advertising, whether that be LGBTQ+, whether that be ethnicity, whether that be age representation, indeed women or non-visible disabilities. So a different theme each year. And over the 7 years, we've given away over £7 million worth of advertising airtime. Later this year, we're going to be giving a £1 million award to E45 and their agency, the And Partnership, who are this year's winners for the 2023 award. And we're excited to see them follow in the footsteps of the previous winners: Maltesers, Lloyds, the Royal Air Force, Starbucks, EA Sports, Tenor, and Vanish. And as you've seen, today we're going to explore how the 2022 winners, last year's winners that came to air in 23, that's Vanish from Reckitt. They delivered a portrayal of disability that not only had business success, but also drove far-reaching social impact. Fundamentally, the award is about a number of very simple concepts. Firstly, that great advertising can drive great business results. Secondly, that better representation in advertising can drive business results, and in fact, possibly even better business results. And the third idea is that great storytelling has to be at the heart of everything, and the brand has to have a legitimate role within the story. So this award is not about diversity and representation for its own sake. It's fundamentally about how all of these things come together to create really powerful advertising that connects with the audience and drives business results. So if we just have a look briefly at the judging criteria, you'll see how all of these things are brought to life. So each year, when we're sitting as a panel, we have different panels, slightly different panel makeup every year. This is the 2022 checklist. These are not in ranked order. They are the 7 facets that the judges are looking for. Importantly, just pulling out the piece there around the clarity, impact, and uniqueness of the creative idea. We're fundamentally looking for a really good piece of advertising. But number 4, it has to perform against the brand's objectives. Can't just be a badging exercise. And importantly, at numbers 6 and 7, how is this going to live beyond the ad itself? How will the business take it on and make changes? And indeed, how will it live on in the following years? And we'll hear a bit more about that in a moment. Before I invite Elliot and Cigdem up to the stage to talk more about that, let's have a look at the 2022 winner, which is the Vanish ad.
Ash, love, 7 o'clock. Have you not had your breakfast yet?
No.
Oh, come on, Lily.
Traffic's a little bit lighter on a Friday.
Ash, yeah, love, have this. Come on, Lily, out we go now. I'm leaving. Go.
It was one of those really annoying teachers and forever when we saw her.
Oh my God, Lily, shut up.
Are we already done?
Okay, Ash, let's have a look.
You're gonna fail.
That is exactly right.
How are you meant to do that without a calculator?
So you get on with this.
I don't have my overlay. I can't read this.
So funny.
Oh, someone pushed me. I'm hurt. I don't know. They pushed me.
I'll ring your mum. You go and sit in the sensory room. Come on, let's get you home.
Dad, can you fix this?
Don't get a please.
Please.
Okay.
Wait, you can't see this, but I can?
Ash, it's time to get up, love.
Mum, have you seen my hoodie?
Oh, see, wet towels.
And your blazers on.
I am not coming into school without it, and Lily's taken it. Tell her to give it me back.
She hasn't. Look.
Don't touch me.
I'm not going to touch it. I'm just sitting here whilst you calm down. Okay? Calm. It's okay.
Ash, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry.
Build a cruise ship if you like, stop the rest of us. We're gonna make Marshmallow Towers.
Please welcome Elliot and Cigdem to the stage. Thank you. Great. So just having seen, obviously, the ad there, very powerful story of a young girl with autism, her favourite hoodie and what that means to her. Perhaps also an unlikely bit of storytelling for the brand, yes, but also kind of a very unexpected piece of storytelling all in all. But Cigdem, tell us a little bit about how the idea to actually feature autism as the non-visible disability in this campaign came out.
Yeah, definitely. I think when you think about Vanish and autism, you don't understand it directly together, right? So it becomes like a surprise news, but it's very much ingrained to the brand thought that I'll take a step to explain maybe why we have chosen autism and why this really works at the heart of the brand as well. I hope that everybody knows about Vanish. It's a stain remover brand. It's the #1 stain remover brand in UK and globally as well. And we are the brand, really, the best friend of the clothing. And the brand's mission is to give the longevity of clothes. The clothes that we wear every day is a burden to nature. And the more we waste our clothes, it creates a lot of really a lot of textile waste. And the fashion is the second most polluting industry in the world. And we have a genuine role to play to lessen that burden because our product, it's so critical to select a topic which is like what is you can do authentically as a brand rather than trying to find a topic which is like, looks like an addition to the brand. We are a brand that can give life to the clothing, and that's the mission of the brand in any case. So while we were working on the Channel 4 campaign, we discovered a very interesting insight. There is a specific community who are the autistic people who gives more importance to clothes longevity than anybody else because they really use the familiar clothing as a sensory building around them. They really love to rewear their clothes longer than anybody. So it's the security around them, almost like a lifeguard. But majority of the population doesn't know that fact, so it becomes like a measure of fun, bullying, a lot of the things as well. So we really genuinely wanted to help them as a brand from two perspectives. I think the first thing is like our brand can survive in that mission because our products is very much ingrained to that mission. But at the same time, we discovered many other things. I think the idea came from Havas. And we were super excited because we discovered like autism is a very unspoken topic in UK. So there are a lot of people, I'm pretty sure that even in the room, a lot of you might be having somebody with autism, some family members or somebody that you have known, but it's not very much outspokenly talked globally, not only in UK neither. So we just wanted to bring a little bit like awareness to this like invisible disability into the face, but at the same time, what is even worse than that one was about the gender imbalance on autism. The reason is like already it takes 2 to 3 years to diagnose autism with a boy. You know, already the process is so long. One of my friends is going through a kind of a process at the moment. Their son sits at home without a diagnosis. And imagine for the girls, that time is 3 times less likely for them to be diagnosed than boys, because girls are wonderful in a way, but at the same time we have a disadvantage as well. We can mask. And girls are masking their autism, so it's not very much visible. So when they go for a kind of diagnostics, so most probably they are sent back home either with no diagnostics, or they are diagnosed with something else, like being bipolar, mental sickness, etc. Imagine the burden on their shoulder as very young girls. They are not diagnosed, so they have to take wrong medications, or people around them don't understand them, and then they are being bullied, you know, a lot of the difficulties in their life. So really, we wanted to bring some awareness about autism, but especially the gender imbalance to girls on autism, just to help them, and then start bringing that topic into conversation, which was very genuine to the brand as well, because that's already what we were doing as a brand, and helping them on the journey of their like familiar clothing as well. That was the idea. But we were all very excited, you know, since the start of the campaign. We felt like it was a direct match with the brand, a great mission to have. And all of us, I think, felt it at our hearts rather than minds. And we all believed in the campaign, so all together.
Yeah. And Elliot, in terms of the storytelling and bringing the idea firstly to the client for approval, but just give us an insight into how that storytelling was developed.
Well, thank you, Channel 4, for keeping us keen as well, because you'll see from that list of 7 pieces of criteria by which the work is judged that we knew very early on that we had a really important job to do if we were going to go about telling this story in a really credible and, you know, authentic way. I think it would be safe to say that we, as an agency and also as a client team, went on a massive learning curve with this project, and it was really important. We worked with our charity partner, Ambitious About Autism, as well on the project, to really make sure that we checked ourselves at the door before we even embarked upon a process. But I think from a storytelling perspective especially, what we realized very early on with the casting process, that we was going to be into a production like no other that we had ever created. Well, because in search of Ash, our girl that's in the film, we realized that actually the more and more we went about the casting process and the kind of honest portrayal of this story and how it had to be told, that every decision and every piece of process and production around that was in service of telling that story. So it became hugely critical for us to make sure that at every step we were very conscious about the way we were going about doing things, but also the portrayal of the story we wanted to tell. We were very lucky in that we had an extremely trusting and kind of, you know, confident client relationship in order to do that, because it basically meant that there were no pre-production meetings, there was no visibility of the usual process that you would go on in order to be able to make a film in this way. So it really started to turn into this drama documentary piece, even though, as Cigdem said, there needed to be a real credibility and role for the brand to be part of telling this story. We knew within the narrative arc of this piece that there was a story about the importance of this garment, but actually everything about the lived experience of the family that you see on screen was designed with them and around them. So it wasn't like we went off and we wrote a script and then we asked a bunch of people to come in and act that script. And we were very lucky that we managed to work with Tom Hooper, the director, who essentially created the conditions for us to be able to start to workshop what each of those moments in the film would start to feel like. Okay. But again, one of the things that I love about the film, and that doesn't often get talked about in the PR of the film, but everyone that you see in that film is a non-actor. Everyone in the film that is a real family. So we ended up casting Ash's mum and dad, her two best friends from school. You know, it really became a thing to be able to work with them and tell their story in a really honest way. So we needed a client that was going to come with us on that journey, because, as I said, it didn't really look like any typical process we'd really gone on before.
So how hard was it to sell in initially, and how hard was it to buy?
I think it was, we embraced the idea of entering the competition. We loved this idea of raising awareness around invisible disability in particular. I think in previous winners, there'd been incredible examples of the competition and the brands that had sort of brought to life elements of disability that felt far more visible than autism. And especially then, our brief to ourselves was about raising the public's awareness of autism in girls in particular, as Cigdem had mentioned. I remember a very telling moment when Tom Hooper, the director, arrived at a meeting with Cigdem and essentially said, well, it's fantastic news. We've got this girl. We found this girl. We think she's incredible. There's no script. There's no, there's no process around this. So please come with us on this, and we're gonna make sure we do a really good job of it. But at that point, I think we were both on the cliff edge, I
bet. And in terms of buying the idea and then also getting the business behind it, what was that journey like?
The idea came directly from the agency, like Havas team. So they called me, they said, like, we have a great idea, so we want to show it to you. I remember, like, very vividly now, it was Friday evening, 7 p.m. in Paddington. They said, we are gonna travel to you. I said, this is Friday evening, are you sure? They said, we can't sleep if we don't show the idea to you. I think I only saw one video, which was a video from a real autistic girl, from somebody from agencies, and their relationship and the struggles they are going through, and how much she valued like one specific dress. I think the moment I saw the video, I was sold on already, because it was very clear to me, not only like the need level, but at the same time brand level, that it was so ingrained. I haven't questioned the link to brand, how we are gonna make this work, why this is Vanish, etc. It felt so authentic as a brand, but at the same time, it was real, so it was we really felt it as a whole team. I could not sleep that night, so after seeing the video. Of course, it's not that easy, then you have to convince a lot of people, you have to take the full army, because it's not the job of only 1, 2 people. Yeah. But when you have a real insight, real problem to solve, and real thing that people really feel in their hearts. Even I remember the conversations with our customers. Can you imagine, like, with a conversation with one of our key customers, Asda, they said, like, we want to give everything to autism on shelf this quarter. That was the excitement they felt when they saw. And I got emails from Asda team every day saying, like, we really love this idea because I have an autistic girl as well, So you touch people's real lives rather than something that isn't. I think it fall away everywhere, within the company, within organization, within our customers. Everybody loved the idea when we went through the journey all together. But at start, it requires a bit convincing, definitely.
And was there a moment at all where you wondered whether you could get it sort of approved by the business to make it something bigger than just the advertising itself?
Yeah, of course, because this is not just the advertising, because you need to be really genuine about it. The first thing, when we heard the idea and the autism, the first ever meeting I have ever done in the company was with our HR team and DNI team, saying, like, we really need to sit down and understand what we are really doing about autism as a company. As Reckitt, what is the regulation, what is our employment, what is that one, what are we going to change first in the house before we start doing an advertising campaign. So that was the first action we have taken. We took a lot of steps internally just to make our employees understand that one recruitment process changed, training everybody on neurodiversity in the company. We have done a massive job before we go on to the advertising stage of it, because you need to be really genuine to carry an idea and advertise it rather than just saying it. So that was a massive work before we run the campaign internally in the company. And it wasn't just about the TVC, it was a social media, customer support. It was one of the biggest campaigns we ran last year on Vanish.
And Elliot, what were the major challenges? Obviously you've talked about no script, the trust of the client being so important and the team. But, again, were there moments where, things slightly took a left turn where you might have expected a right turn?
I think it was more in once we were actually shooting with the family, that there was still this sense of lack of visibility about what was coming next. We had a sort of structure that we were following to a point, but actually there was still, I remember days where we were turning up on set and trying to formulate the conditions around, Ash and her family on that day and making sure that we got key scenes out of it, but also allowing for it to, it actually felt like one of the most freeing filmmaking processes to be part of. I mean, in a world where I think a lot of our work now has to go and be validated and go through Kantar and go through a whole series of different methodology to sort of test it, this one really did feel like we were designing something very bespoke to the issue. And as Cigdem said, the role and the credibility of the brand and that the product gives permission for us to be able to tell that story was really important. But it was proper on the hoof documentary filmmaking, I would say, at some points. We shot something like 60 hours of footage.
Wow.
Which then we started, there are versions of the film that run at various lengths, and we could easily have done a 6-part drama documentary series, I think, on this topic by the end of it.
Well, we'll see what we can do with that
Thank
at
you.
another time.
You all heard
So
that.
Cigdem, I mean, obviously, as I set up, the award is designed to prove business success for the brands that can embrace better representation and diversity on screen in their advertising. Did it work?
This was such an irregular campaign for us as well when we started the journey. So we designed measurements to the death, before we even started the campaign. We put a couple of KPIs. The first KPI was about the brand equity KPIs in the way that we run the campaign and the impact on brand persuasion and the sales KPIs. That was the first KPI that we looked at the campaign. The second was more around impact to autism awareness in UK. We have run a kind of pre and post, and impact and awareness about the gender imbalance on autism as well. We measured 3 KPIs, along with some internal company KPIs as well, saying like how many people are we training internally, are we changing our processes, what is the impact on our employees, are people able to speak about autism or any invisible disability within the company, or are we adjusting for them? That was the 4th KPI that we have put before we started the campaign. I can say that it was one of the best successful campaigns, very interestingly, because nobody was expecting to see that result coming over. It created a massive impact on brand KPIs. Sales impact was tremendous. We weren't expecting to see, but because it had such a kind of feeling to everybody, even a lot of our customers wanted to give extra visibility to Vanish at that stage, which created a kind of like huge, massive impact to the brand sales at that stage. Autism awareness and gender diversity in all of the KPIs, we overachieved all of the targets that we have put before the campaign. So that's why it was so important to create the continuity of the campaign as well. It's not okay just to do one campaign at a time. That becomes a fame campaign. It becomes a real brand say when you can do this continuously. So that's why we measured it in that sales, and it out-delivered on all of the KPIs we have put on the campaign.
Fantastic. So in terms of then the next stages and carrying it on, I mean, you were obviously in charge of the brand at the time that the award was won, but there must be because you have to do it, the sustainability of it. Elliot, tell us about what might come next.
Absolutely. Again, I think this is what's brilliant and why we encourage everyone now to continue to operate around the Channel 4 Diversity Prize, because that criteria, continues and you have to be serious about the longevity of what you're doing. Yes, difficult second album as we speak. I think we're really conscious that we want to continue to elevate these stories. I think that what we did in the first year was send a really good flare up. It gained lots of awareness. It did other things holistically for the brand that we never, I think, had we gone into it being quite assumptive about all of the things it was going to do, I wonder where we would have gone with that if those pressures had been put on it at those points. But, we set out to just be emotive and have really strong storytelling and have a really clear sense of the brand's role within that. We want to continue that again this year. So we're going to continue to tell these stories. We won't be doing them in film. We're going to look at some other ways that we might do that. And also I think at a certain point when people have seen the awareness piece, then they're looking under the bonnet going, so now what? What are you actually doing? And to Cigdem's point, you know, Reckitt had already started looking at the things they were doing internally as a business. They want to continue to be better and continue to learn around that. We as Havas did that. I mean, our CEO, Zav, everyone at the agency was really, really passionate about making sure that there was commitment there. So it's an amazing thing to be able to have this project now, which gives the brand the opportunity to tell story when the product isn't speaking. Because of course the product will always do its job, and there's, you know, we make lots of comms for all sorts of different brands that we work with Reckitt, but actually this idea that a brand starts to be able to turn up and behave in different ways that still feels relevant, still feels right for the product or the brand, but starts to extend the type of things that it can do and where it can go and tell those stories. So that's very much on the table right now, like literally hot to be approved. Yeah.
We look forward to seeing it.
Thanks.
And has it also influenced how you might be working with your other clients in terms of encouraging them to be perhaps bolder or to think differently about representation?
Yeah, I mean, personally speaking, I feel like this is a minimum standard now, that you should be absolutely focused on these things at the base point of when you're looking at the type of work that you want to make, the idea of making sure we represent the world that we show up in and the people. I think it was the biggest learning for us as a creative team was especially, and I have to again thank Channel 4 for this piece of education, but I think this idea around representation gets talked about a lot, you know, in front of the camera, behind the camera. Yes, that's really true, but I think what we learned most about was this idea of portrayal. And actually you have to maximize the chance of getting portrayal right when you're representing those, you know, communities or those situations or those occasions. So I hope that good work is infectious. You know, I think you know, we were talking about another brand and another, you know, project that's happening at the moment, and this idea that you can start to evidence, I guess, that there are ways for these, you know, essentially large, let's be honest, large FMCG brands like, you know, Reckitt have in their portfolio are not the first that you think of when you're thinking about the emotive storytelling that we've got here. So yes, I think it does have a ripple within the culture of their business. All clients are looking over the garden fence at each other, wondering what they're doing, and you know, it's a pretty competitive landscape anyway. So I know that yeah, we have to continue to sort of benchmark ourselves against that now. It's really important to do that.
And Cigdem, it sounds like the impact, as you say, has been much broader in terms of whether it be recruitment policies or, you know, about staff training. Has it also felt its way more broadly into the Reckitt sort of culture in terms of thinking about different areas and initiatives to become involved in?
A couple of things we run in the company is that we run some trainings for every employee just to understand how to work with a person in your team who has invisible disability. I learned a lot of personal things. For example, I discovered after this campaign that 2 people in my team had autism and they never told me before. You know, it brought the topic into some level of like conversation, so they felt more comfortable telling me. I never noticed it before, they were masking it, you know. And then it really helps us to adjust the way that we run the meetings, or, you know, find a kind of like comfort zone for them in the company, etc. So it taught us a lot of the things. So we work with a lot of experts, by the way, in the campaign, because autism is not our expertise. That's quite a kind of the experts need to help you on this type of projects as well. We work with Ambitious about autism, and then we work with Dr. Laura Hall just to help you understand it and see like how we can really create this campaign and then change a lot of the things. They taught a lot of things about the recruitment policies, the employment procedures, etc. I think the biggest impact happened when the senior leaders in the organization who had autistic girls or boys came on stage just to openly talk about their own stories during Stronger Together events in the company, which was like broadcasted. It created a massive difference. I can't tell you how many people stopped me in the company saying like, I also have this, I also need this support in that case. So it created a huge cultural shift. There's still a lot to be done. I'm not saying like this is perfect. We are nowhere near perfect. I think nobody is. But it is a good step to understand the gaps, and everybody's so passionate to make it better and better every year.
Yeah. And if you had one piece of advice to impart to a brand that might be thinking about, I guess, sort of doing this combination and thinking about perhaps representation and portrayal differently and much more centrally in how they think about things, what would your advice be?
My advice would be just not to leave this as a kind of like really theoretical stage, because D&I becomes too generic sometimes for some of the brands. We look at very generic things. We have good incentives, but putting some measurements into place, pre-testing in place. Consumers tell you massive things, not only about gender diversity. We try to test every advertising, critical one, before it goes on air. And the things I learned from the consumer verbatims is like the things I could have never imagined on my own. You know, they are telling you really interesting things. When you test as consumers and understand that one, and when you start measuring it, putting some KPIs within the company, that's the moment it becomes reality rather than a dream. So that was a kind of massive thing I have learned, you know, having worked on a lot of brands so far. That was the biggest change that made the change for us. Even before this campaign, we aired this, we made massive testings, not the link test maybe, but just to understand if we are ignoring anything from consumers, and they told us like massive things as well. So that will be my one recommendation, if there is one. Yeah.
Thank you. And Elliot, what advice would you have?
I think, well, as the inception of this story started, strategy, like, please be sure that the strategy that you have for the brand that you work on and the businesses that you're interacting with have a really clear sense of self. And the architecture we had worked on together, we understood absolutely the product, the purpose, what gave permission to what, and that allowed us to, I think, begin a process with an insight, which came internally from people that we got to speak to allow us to move forward on it. I think if you move forward and if your house is not in order and those things don't feel secure, then it feels like that has the potential to break at some point. So having a really clear strategic foundation, I think, is super important for any type of piece of creativity, really.
Thank you. And I suppose, just to wrap up, I would actually offer a call to arms to this room and to those beyond it. In 2022, we ran disability, both visible and non-visible, as the theme. It was, in fact, the first time that we'd revisited a theme. We had run disability in 2016 when Maltesers were the winners. And in fact, when we ran the research at the beginning of 2022, we found that there had been absolutely no change in the portrayal or representation of disability on screen in advertising. So things need to keep moving forward, and we ask everyone in this room to be bold and to think about, actually, there's a fundamental commercial truth here. Great storytelling with brilliant representation and portrayal drives great business results. And that's the thought I'd like to leave you all with today. Thank you to you both.
Thank you. Thank you.